So we're missing Councillor Tweel and the deputy, and then Councillor Duran can't make it because he had an operation on his hip, so he'll be out of commission for 4 to 6 weeks.
Did you say the other two were not coming, Your Worship?
We don't know. Did you hear from the Mr. Kelly?
We have not heard from either Councillor Tweel or from the Deputy Mayor.
But we haven't heard from...
duty tonight. He's on the floating dock. He's got.
Okay, we're live. Councillor Duran is not able to make it. So, declarations of conflict of interest. Any?
See none.
None. There's only one item on the agenda. Approval of the agenda. Moved by Councillor Duffy, second by Councillor Ramsey. All in approval or all in? Great. Discussion. Councillor Ramsey, since you met at noon hour, I'm sorry I couldn't make the meeting. I was with the Brown Brothers doing a job that we had to do today. Do you want to just give us a summary of what took place at noon hour?
Yes, Your Worship, thank you for that. We had Councillor Rivard, Councillor Duffy, Councillor Yankoff was in, CAO, and we had the groups in, Mr. Murphy and Jeff Sinnott, I believe his last name is Greg, is it? Jeff Sinnott. And the gentleman for the Chinese restaurant.
Gordy Clow.
Gordy Clow, I'm sorry, Gordy, I forgot your name, if you're listening. But anyway, it went over well. They presented everything to us. We had people question a few issues. Councillor Rivard probably questioned the most. But anyway...
For clarification purposes.
Exactly, and things went well, I thought. We had the police chief speak on the odd issue, the fire chief, public works. They all spoke on behalf of it. And where it states is that they're still like to see it happen for a pilot project this year. But talking to a few people too, if, in my own personal view, if it's gonna happen, the street should be shut down like Victoria Road all through the night and everything along that line.
From Great George to Queen, is that what you're saying?
Yes, exactly, that one little block, Your Worship. But after that, so we decided it has to go back to council, whether what the council wants or think about it or any questions. The police chief is here, the fire chief is here, and Albert is here for public works.
Good.
And the CAO is also here, so we can.
So there's no...
Manning's here too, sorry, Alex.
Yeah, so there's no recommendation, but with no recommendation, that doesn't imply a rejection.
Correct.
Correct, okay? Mr. Kelly, did you want to give us some light on it?
Just a couple of points, Bishop. We have met with the property owners on Sydney Street, both the police, fire, and also public works. There were 9 points raised to bring the matter forward. You all have copies of that. There's also copies in the presentation that was done through Mr. Murphy. And if you wish, we can go through those, or council can take it to whatever direction they want to go. But we felt that these were fair in terms of trying to at least get a greater understanding of our responsibilities and our challenges moving forward, Your Worship. And there is also in your package and a minutes from this afternoon that the chief took, and they are there for your review. And it is here for direction from council to make sure that you're aware of the situation and give us direction going forward, Your Worship.
Does the council want to just take a few minutes just to look over the package? Do you want
trying to read the minutes from today's meeting.
or do you just want to keep moving on?
Well,
I didn't receive
I
it,
guess
so-
that's a question,
We can ask questions. Councilor Bernard, do you want to go?
but I guess that's why I'm looking to ask the question. I understand this has been with the police a few times. They've had all the information. I'm wondering why there's not a recommendation.
So it was the recommendation is if they would adhere to these 9 points, we believe that we could possibly move the file forward. But these points were a sticking point for their opportunity. They feel they can't meet all these this year, and they want to be able to then do a test and then go forward to a more in-depth process for next year. But the issues for number 9, number 8, and number 7, there were some challenges, and they felt that they were not doable fully this year. They do have a lot of correspondence from suppliers, but they don't have it from all suppliers. with the persons who spoke this afternoon, there were both pro and con, and people who said they were in favor, others that said they were opposed. But at the end of the day, when we sent these 9 points, it was felt that if they could achieve them, then we'd find a way to, again, try to move the file forward.
But I think, to me, and maybe I'm missing something here, I think it'd be pretty simple, that there's two things. Is it a safety issue, or is it not a safety issue? And does it risk putting somebody out of business by closing off the street? Two things. So can you answer me? Is it a safety issue?
For fire, they have a concern under NFPA.
Okay, they have a concern.
And
So
I'll
is
let
it-
the chiefs speak to that if you wish.
Is there a risk of putting anybody out of business?
Not to our knowledge. And there are some concerns under public works as well. And police also have had some concerns and will work with our processes. But obviously, overall, we felt that these were fair in trying to move the file forward. And if they could be all adhered to and met, it is doable. But unfortunately, there are some impediments here that they believe they can't complete.
Yeah, this year. Councilor Rivera.
No, I'm good right now.
Oh, I thought you had your hand up. Councilor McLeod.
Right now?
So, just a minute, the council asked for the chief of fire to speak, your worship, and
Did you want an explanation there from Councilor Bernard
Yes, please.
on the life safety code? Is that what we're talking about? Yeah, just use that mic
over
there.
here, no,
Or
just
you
over here.
you can
at
use the one on the table.
no, sorry, chief
What's the wire
over, chief over at the, yep. I apologize.
That's all right.
My first day here.
I'm sort of used to the EMO meetings when I have to go to the Senate. Your worship, council, Council Bernard, the fire department's taken a look at this, and I personally took a look at it. I was asked during a committee meeting to take a look at it. I knew there was a proposal coming forward. So I did go down, I did do a quick look. I didn't take a quick look, I took a fairly significant look at it. And of course, I'm no spring chicken here either, folks. I've been around for a long time, and I've been in that backyard a lot of different times over the years. So yeah, there are 17 propane tanks in that backyard. There's actually 9 55-gallon drums of waste oil, cooking oil.
Did you say 17?
17, 17.
Where are they all?
There's various businesses in back there. There's also a large garbage dumpster, and there's some vehicle parking back there. So it is a really congested area. The other thing I took into consideration was the width of Sydney Street. And some people are making comparisons to Victoria Row. Well, it's not apples to apples. Sydney Street is a lot narrower than Victoria Row is. I've measured those out. I've provided them those dimensions in my report back and gave it to the CAO, submitted to the CAO. We've looked at other jurisdictions, that sort of thing, what takes place. And really what I'm concerned about here is the seriousness of the fire load. Yep, the potential is there. Victoria Row is an interconnection of buildings. There are very few sprinkler systems in that whole city block. So if there's a significant fire, it will probably end up losing the block.
So those propane tanks, I take it, Chief, are along the building that the apartments are above Victoria Road?
They're in various locations in the courtyard. And because Queen Street restaurants also get serviced off of that courtyard service area.
Queen Street?
Queen Street restaurants,
Oh, yes. okay.
China Garden.
Okay.
But
So
the
it's
17 tanks are not all in one, I think that's a clarification. They're not all in one area.
They're not all in one area. They're in various locations.
Okay.
So anytime you start to narrow down a fire lane or fire road, an access point, the fire department becomes very concerned about that. With Victoria Row, one of our guys, first truck, will have to stop and open a lock to proceed in. That's not a good situation. So when you look at that and you say, now we want to duplicate that, and then you really got to start to say, you know, are we going too far here? Maybe it's time to back up and take another look at this sort of thing and get some more answers. We have decks down there in parking spaces, and you know, we need to look at that as well. There's only so much room that we can work. A couple of weeks ago, we had a structure fire down in Dorchester Street, and extremely close quarters. We got to remember that we're not exempt from having a great fire again. We had one back in 1866. We lost 4 city blocks. In the mid-'90s, we fought a fire over here in University Avenue. We lost half a city block. So it's not that we can't have another fire. We can. And we have to be very careful of that.
Especially with the old buildings.
It's the whole block there is in
Yeah.
question, okay? And we also got to remember that we got zero lot lines for a lot of properties. Like, they're very close together. And when you really scrutinize it, probably not a lot has changed in this end of the city, since 1866. We still have a fairly significant amount of wooden buildings. So it is a concern. So there's no question about it. And then how do you
So there shouldn't be a conversation. I mean, it's a safety issue, there's no question.
There's a
That's what
safety
they tell
concern here,
us.
yes, absolutely.
I think it would have been easy to make a recommendation.
We're not done yet. Yeah. There's a couple more questions. Councilor McLeod?
Just, I guess, you're in the hot seat again, Randy, so liability would fall on the face of the city, I would assume?
The CAO has followed up with legal, and if we're outside the fire code, we are definitely liable.
That's all I need to know.
And also, Your Worship, I did talk to the insurance company today too, and also the same situation. I mean, council is insured for decisions made, but also be aware if the wrong one is made, then we're also on the hook for that wrong decision as well.
As councillors.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
As
Yep.
a city, Your Worship.
Corporation.
Say that again, Peter, sorry?
So, council is entitled to make decisions, obviously, and we are covered for those decisions. And in the event here, if you make a decision and if anything were to occur, then we'd also be responsible for the outcomes of those as well.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Rivera?
Thank you, Your Worship. I did get an email from Kent McPhee just before the meeting started, and he was just suggesting that if council is opposed to closing down Sydney Street for 7 weeks, is there something that can be done maybe between Friday afternoon into Sunday evening, just as a sidebar ask, if you will?
Yeah.
I'm just throwing it out there because I just received the
We
email.
can keep that in mind while we...
And I just wanted to point out that way it's on the record, but, because I think last year, what was the terms last year?
It was every Sunday, right, Mr. Kelly?
Yes, sure.
It's been going on for 4 years.
8 weeks, I think.
What's that?
For 8 weeks, I believe, for last year.
Okay.
On Sundays only.
Yes.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Councillor Duffy?
I was just going to say, I think, Your Worship, if it's a dangerous situation for 4 days of the week, it's a dangerous situation for 7 days of the week. So, it's a good shot, but...
Oh, no, I'm just pointing
Yeah,
out.
I understand, yeah. So I wouldn't go for that. If it's dangerous, it's dangerous, no matter
Yeah.
how short or how long.
I know that Councillor Yankoff has a response to that. I think half pregnant.
Well, you can't be a little bit pregnant,
Yeah.
yeah.
Do you want to go with what you have to say?
I just wanted a little bit of clarification, because I was in the meeting at lunchtime,
Yeah.
and the tone of that meeting is very different than what I'm hearing now. And correct me if I'm wrong, Chief, but what I heard was that you didn't have a recommendation because it wasn't the 20 feet worry was met, and the life safety concerns addressed for the street that initially were the things that were the building blocks that were stopping us from proceeding with this pilot project are now no longer in the conversation, but now we have new concerns that we never knew about before. So I'm just, like, as of today, we didn't even know that Public Works had a problem with it until just today. We were told all along that Public Works was okay with it. So I'm still as confused as I was before in terms of the one thing that I thought was a concern was the liability when it came to that you needed that golden 20 feet. And you got that, but now we have other things.
Yeah.
Just looking for a little more clarification, because the tone at lunchtime was very different
Yeah.
than what I'm hearing now.
What I've told you, councils, this evening so far is in my report. So there's no tone change. That concern is still very much there, and it always has been.
Right.
What we've learned is that the 20 feet, less than that 20 feet back a little bit to something 16 feet, 17 feet, whatever it would be, it's not from the goodness of my heart, because I can't step outside the fire code. That's because the fire code allowed it for a one-way street. Okay? When the proposal comes out that they don't want to come into the parking lot and come back up through the parking lot to Grafton Street, they want to come back out onto Sydney Street and go back up the opposite way. They want to head east. That's a two-way street. So now we're back to 20 feet maybe. And I'm sort of getting the impression that maybe we don't know enough about this whole proposal yet. Maybe we need to really iron it out a little bit more than we've got.
In terms of life safety code?
No, for the traffic flows. Because that's why we went from 20 feet down to about 16 feet, because the fire code allowed that because of a one-way street. But if we're going to take that street and turn two ways, then it's a little bit different.
Go ahead there,
Follow-up?
Councillor
So
Yankoff.
as a follow-up then, it was suggested at lunchtime that if that's the concern, why not put the barrier up at Grafton Street as well as the second barrier at the Old Dublin Pub? And that first barrier, the signage would say, for pedestrians and residents only. So then it's not a one or a two-way street. It's just closed off and it's there for emergency for you, but the residents can still get down. So then we don't have public works issue or concern of random people driving down the street, realizing the street was closed because they had forgotten to read the sign and having to turn around in a private parking lot. So does that not eliminate some of those liabilities?
What I need to have come back from whoever, Public Works or whoever it may be, is this street one-way or a two-way street? The fire code gives you...
Yeah, Mr.
The fire code will give you a little bit of wiggle room if it's a one-way street. That's where we come off the 20 feet, we're able to back off a little bit because of that. But if we got a street that's going to be could be two ways, then we have to go back and look at the fire code.
Yes, just, could we get Al, no, and Councillor Yankoff, you can follow up. Albert, you're engineering background. Are you civil engineer?
I am.
Yeah, so you're with Public
Once
Works?
an engineer, always an engineer.
I know. I got a brother and a nephew. Albert, what's your concern about the?
So, Council, Your Worship, so Public Works' concern is we do recommend that it stay a one-way street and that it's closed at Great George and at Queen.
Yeah.
We have a few issues with the midpoint closing at the parking lot or at the Old Dublin Pub. If we do that, then we're going to have vehicles coming down, and like the chief said, they're going to have to turn around, and then it becomes a two-way street. So with that, there's a lot of confusion with pedestrians, with vehicles. Anybody coming down is going to have to turn around. They're going to have to access or drive on private property.
Yeah.
So that causes liability issues for the city. Another reason is they're recommending, as I believe in the proposal, that this stay open just for a few hours, like half of the day, 12 p.m. I believe, or 12 p.m. till 11 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
So if we do that, Public Works is going to have a lot of issues with putting up signage, changing it from one way to two way and then back. And again, that confuses a lot of people. Wow. It's just going to cause confusion for drivers, confusion for anybody walking, confusion for us. Who does that if somebody misses a sign, somebody doesn't read a sign?
Yeah. And we have a problem with that too, people reading signs.
Yeah. So there's that, and then the other issue is parking. Right now, there's parking on both sides of that street. If we say there's no parking when there usually is parking, people always get confused. If we put up barricades or remove the meters or anything, it's just going to cause a lot of confusion. People are still going to park there.
Councillor Yankoff, do you want to follow up with Albert?
Sure. Thank you for that. So what do you suggest that it would work? What I had just said, that the barrier would be up at Grafton as well as the second barrier down by Great George, and then the second one down by the Old Dublin Pub, so it's considered a closed street all the time, except for residents that can come in to park and people to walk.
So how do they do the deliveries?
Just 1 second, Albert, can you answer that?
Yeah, kind of. So the recommendation is it closes at Great George Street and at Queen Street. So the full street, just like Victoria Row, from
Okay.
Great George to Queen, that we close it at both of those sides. then we would have to work with whoever to install bollards or something like a gate at both ends of the street, and we would allow, just like Victoria Row, no through traffic.
But people could still do their deliveries in the morning?
They would have, in the morning, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Similar to
Oh, okay.
Victoria Road, same thing. Yeah,
Well, that's a great solution.
yeah.
Or they
Well, they're
do-
putting barricades
Yeah,
up.
just-
You're going to move them every morning?
No, just 1 second. I just want to make sure Councillor Yankoff,
No, I had enough
Great
time.
George,
Yep.
Queen.
So basically what you're saying, Albert, is you just close the whole street, but then you would just come up with a plan for residents to know that they can get through to park, because there are parking lots there for the residents to get their cars down and back, so it's still closed, it's just, there's people that live there are allowed to get their car down.
So through the closure, so if I think the closure is from 12 p.m. in the afternoon till 11 p.m., that's when we're closing it. We recommend that it stays closed, and nobody would be allowed through. Even for deliveries, they would have to happen before that closure happened. After the closure, when the gates are closed, I guess we would have to work out who's going to close those gates.
Yeah.
When the gates are closed, nothing gets through it
Yeah.
unless fire or ambulance.
Similar to Victoria Road, correct?
Until
So
11
the-
a.m. too, your worship.
So the residents couldn't get their cars back in then?
No, they would have to work out a way to go through the parking lots
Yeah.
that are up there somehow.
Number 9.
Yeah. Councillor McKay?
That was exactly my question. I want a clarification because I understood when you're closing the street, you're closing the street. Residents will not be coming in to park.
No, they'll have to
in
go
those
through,
hours.
there has to be some kind of arrangement with Great George Street parking lot, entering the other parking
Number
lots.
9.
Yeah, but no, that's what
Yeah.
I just wanted to, because I think you were thinking the
Supposed to start
residents
at
would get
11
in.
a.m. too, your worship. So,
But it'd be the same, replicate what goes on in Victoria Road. Councillor Bernard,
Does anybody talk to any of the residents
That was my
that
next
use that
question.
parking lot? And they let them
Councillor
know
Yankoff?
Potentially it may close? Has that been talked about with anybody?
Someone said that maybe the landlord was talked to, but they didn't think that the
Yeah.
tenants themselves were spoken to. I don't know that for sure, but
I was under the understanding that the landlord had been spoken to, and that he didn't have any problem with it, but I think that was not with this new plan that Albert has.
Not with West Manor?
Well, with this new way that Albert wants to do it, that would mean that the landlord would have to haul out that flower bed or that box,
Yeah.
give up a few parking spots
Two.
for people to drive through, all for a 7-week pilot project. And the argument or the suggestion this afternoon was, if we've allowed this to happen for 4 different Sundays by changing things up for 4 Sundays and all during, like, we did it for Farm Day in the City and we did it every single Sunday during the farmer's market, I always went back to that argument. If it was a liability then, I go back to that same thing. We can't be a little bit pregnant. If we're liable, we're liable. And I just think it's just this one short time, and I have so much empathy for those that had the other restaurant owners that had concerns, but it's just a pilot. It's just a pilot to try it with COVID, and I just hope that there's some way that we can come up with a compromise.
Is there any concern with any of the other business owners? With deliveries or anything like that?
yes.
Councillor Ramsey, what was brought up?
they, one was John Brown's, and he
Jeff
said,
That's
sorry.
Jeff
Oh,
said.
yes, we had some emails from them.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he didn't fully agree with Mr. Murphy's comments on all of them, and he just thought that, for example, he used one example, let's say that one of the fans or vents broke in the middle of the afternoon and you can't get anybody up there to fix it, so he has to shut down his restaurant. But that's the same with Mr. Murphy's restaurants also, if something ever happened, because once the street's shut down, it's shut down. And then the other thing is, he says he's not too impressed with the delivery, I think it was, Mike, was it?
2,200.
Yeah, like last year, he had 2,200 of the deliveries, which he knows he won't get this year because of the COVID-19. But at the same time, he just thinks it's just gonna be too hard to get at all the time. And then the other gentleman said he has staff,
Gordy Clough.
yes,
China Garden.
that comes, he doesn't open his restaurant till 4 o'clock, which is a little later than other restaurants, and he just said staff has their parking behind there, so where do they go and all that. So he's on the fence with the whole thing too.
So is he on the fence, or is he against it?
He's not against it. He just says whatever, he just wants a place for his staff and himself to park, I guess. And he's saying if all of a sudden I gotta go out and pick something up at 5 o'clock, like how do I sort of take it in my back door?
Yeah.
And is there answers for those questions that he had at the police committee?
No, there wasn't really.
Okay.
He's willing to compromise, Councillor Bernard.
Yeah, but there
Councillor Bernard.
has to be a compromise there for him to agree to.
Yeah.
I mean, Jeff Sinnott also said too, he said if all of a sudden it's not gonna look good if one of his deliveries does not get there before the 11 a.m. time, and then they're wheeling oysters or steaks or anything up through the whole street. It's a 45-meter walk, is it, Councillor Duffy? I think he said.
Yeah, 45, 46, isn't it?
Yeah, 46 and all that stuff, and he said that doesn't look good, and people, things along that line, so there is some opposition against it.
Your Worship, for him, it was an operational concern. In order for him to operate, it was not a competitive issue, but it was an operational issue.
Yes, exactly.
Was this Mr. Clove?
No, Mr.
Senator. Yeah. Councillor Rivera?
Thank you, Your Worship. So the point number 9, Mr. Kelly, access from apartment residence must be through the church and private parking lot. The church parking lot, is that the parking lot that the
MLAs use.
They use.
Yeah.
Is there first and foremost, is there access from that parking lot through to the parking? And
To the number 2, but number 3, as Councillor Yankoff said, there's a flower bed that would have to be removed. So there would be 4 parking spaces jeopardized by this.
So, and I can't remember if the conversation was had at the lunchtime meeting. I must have missed it. But so have they got permission from the church, or have we been in contact with the church to get kind of any clarity? Or
so
no,
I have spoken with the church today, this afternoon, and it would have to go to their finance and property committee before they could even commit to such an outcome. And Father Keith couldn't indicate the time frame in which that would occur. So it is a possibility if all parties got together at some point in time to work their way back and forth.
Yeah.
But right now, they were unable to commit to a quick response with respect to this matter.
So, Mr. Kelly, you know that the church leases it to the provincial government for the house?
That's
so
correct,
that's where the MLAs
right, and
park?
that's what was also part of that discussion.
Yeah.
Again, he said we'd have to go to that committee before he could even comment, Your Worship.
Councillor Rivard, do you have another question?
So if we were to go under Public Works recommendation, which is to close the Sydney Street off right at the top, Great George, the only access really into the parking would be through this parking lot that we're talking about.
And they can't get through all parking lots.
What's that, sorry?
They cannot get through all 3 parking lots from that.
Yeah, but they can't even get through. But you're saying that they can't get through the first one right now without permission from.
At this time, that's correct.
Yeah. The third one, Mr. Kelly, is where there's a step down that would have to be graded off. Number 1 to number 2 is open. It would have to be. It would remove 2 parking spaces. And 2 for the flower bed that's in there. I think, is that right, Councillor Yankoff? There's a flower bed there? Between
Yep.
2 and 3.
Yeah. And the other thing too, Your Worship,
Yes.
was, it was brought up at the meeting that there would be, back to that 20-foot thing, which incidentally, just as a sidebar, I don't understand why we use that NFPA fire code. It comes out of the US and we don't use the Canadian fire
adopted
code.
by the
but
province.
That's a whole other,
So, and
Anyhow.
just on that point, Councillor, the province has adopted NFPA, Chief, if that's correct, and so we must concur with that as well. Chief, any comment on that one?
That's correct.
Okay.
It's a provincial statute, and we follow.
Okay.
And also adopted under the environmental bylaw.
It's like the National Building Code.
okay, cool. When it came to that 20-foot thing, I think that it was agreed at that meeting that the brick house was going to give up the use of that area, the sidewalk, so that we would have the 20 feet where it became narrow? Was that,
Was that the site meeting that we had?
no, that was today, wasn't it?
Oh, okay.
Didn't they say, wasn't that said, Councillor Rivard?
I can't recall. Sorry.
Yeah, there was, that they were willing to not put anything on the sidewalk in front of Brick House and up by Old Dublin Pub to ensure that the 20 feet were there, because they didn't need to put any patio, like they didn't have to take up the sidewalk, so that would give the 20 feet back? Was that not?
And that was stated at the site visit meeting that we were at also.
Yeah, there's so many meetings, I think so, yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right, Councillor, right? There was something about one sidewalk was gonna be clear, right?
Yeah.
Now, like, I'm like you, like after a while, your head starts to
The
spin.
one on the north side.
The north side was it, Mike?
Yes.
Or Councillor Duff?
Chief?
Correct.
Did you want to?
Again, I'll repeat myself again. The 20 feet in the fire code is there, has to be maintained. If it's a one-way street, there's a section in the fire code that lets us lessen that 20 feet if it's a one-way street. Again, it's not out of the goodness of my heart to step away from this 20 feet. I have to be able to provide, I have to be provided that authority in the code, which the code permits. Okay, so it's within the code. So it's not something that I pull out of the sky.
No,
No.
It's within the code.
Right.
All right, and that's why we're going from 20 feet down, because the street's going to go one way. If you're going to turn around and have two ways going up and down the street, then we're back into the 20 feet. Because it's not a one-way street.
I thought we had the 20 feet.
If you have a one-way street, you can have...
That was
you
at the
can-
site
you
visit.
can
We do
less
have
than
20 feet, Councillor Yankoff, on the diagram it shows.
As a
Right.
one-way.
Existing?
As a one-way.
No, this.
Well, that's, is that what you're saying, Chief?
On the
No,
diagram,
you can have 20 as a two-way. You have to have 20 as a two-way street.
Yeah.
If you're going to
If you
go...
go one way, there's a little wiggle room to get you down a little bit.
but in the
Basically,
diagram,
Public Works is saying they don't recommend two-way. So this is
Right.
the battle we have to decide.
Correct.
but whether it's one or two, in the diagram, they have the 20 feet.
Correct.
Because they're willing to give up anything to be put on the sidewalk at Brick House. So they have the 20 feet, whether it's one-way or two-way. So they have the 20 feet.
Do they have the, sorry.
Just one second. Do you want to answer that, Chief?
I do. I don't think anybody would expect the fire department to be driving up over sidewalks, that sort of thing in response. The sidewalk is great to be able to have that extra room to put an outrigger down if we have to on the ladder truck. That's great. We certainly appreciate that. But we're able to come away from the 20 feet in accordance with the code, if it's a one-way street.
Your worship, it's in the package.
Yeah, no, I know. I think we're just, Councillor Duffy, I think it's just some confusion. Is that two-way from ODP to Great George that's confusing
Yeah.
the issue? As Albert said, to clarify, Albert, if it's one way from Great George down to Queen, we got the 20. It's,
Yeah,
correct?
correct.
And meets the fire code too, right, Chief?
But you don't need the 20 if you're only one way.
There's a little more wiggle room.
You have to maintain 20
Flexibility.
foot clear width, okay? And that's where we get the sidewalk. And we're able to, if it's going one way, we're able to walk away, we're able to, not walk away, we're able to have some leniency in the fire code to narrow down that 20 feet.
Well, I know this much, Chief. We got the best fire service east of Montreal, so they can tackle anything. Councillor Bernard?
No, I'm just, I'm a little surprised where this is going, because what I'm getting out of this is the fire chief says there's concerns. It's 15 propane tanks.
17.
I know if one of my kids were living in the apartment buildings above Victoria Road, there's no way I'd even have a half-hour discussion on this. You have businesses that don't agree with it. And now you have a parking issue that you don't have permission to use as the only way to get in and out. I'm not sure why this was a tough decision to make for the emergency and police services to make a recommendation. Nothing here makes sense unless it's becoming a political issue. This is not safe. And the chief made it very clear this is not safe.
Well, he is providing some flexibility if it stays one way, correct, Chief?
That's not
Just to
right.
clarify that.
It would be in accordance with the fire code, Your Worship.
Yeah. Okay.
Are you recommending it? Yes or no? Would you recommend that this go ahead?
If I recommend it the way it currently is, no.
If it goes one way from Great George to Queen,
Great George down to Queen, we could take another look at it, Your Worship.
In that case, there would have to be a lot of discussion around parking for the residents, around making sure that, everybody was taken care of for that reason
Back to
too.
the 9 points.
Like, I'm assuming when the farmer's market was there, they must have had their stuff set up on the sidewalk.
no, they were on the street. I was down.
In the parking places, in the
Farm day in
parking
the
spots.
city, you mean?
Farm Day in the city and
That's
also
what I mean.
on the Sunday.
That's what I mean, yeah.
On the Sunday farmer's market.
They were set up in the actual parking spots.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have the 3-time pie championship right here.
you know.
Yes.
I was robbed,
Yeah.
just for the record.
And
Councillor Yankoff, is it possible to sit down again about closing, well, what do you want to do? Do you want to just say no to it and move on?
For me, I just have a liability issue.
Yeah, well,
That's my,
Yeah.
like, it's great for us to bend the rules after we created them.
Yeah.
So, and then we're gonna say, yeah, go ahead, after we created these 9 points that can't be met.
Yeah.
I just have trouble now hanging on to saying,
Yeah.
like, I understand, right? I'm in the food business, I know how bad it is, but I just have trouble, my personally, myself, with my name on something that could possibly cause a lot of problems.
Councillor Duffy, thank you, Councillor McLeod.
Thank you, Your Worship. I don't want to rustle these favors. In addition to what's been said already tonight, this is a very, as I said at dinner time today, this is a very tough decision, you know. It's a lot of elements to it, and balls in the air and whatever. But where I'm coming from the whole thing, over and above what Chief Smith and Chief McDonald have explained to us both today at dinner time and tonight, is like the downtown core is very important to me. It's our lifeblood. There's great merchants down there. There's great restaurateurs. There's great pharmacists. So where I have the problem with the whole thing is when we're representing or talking about people that own and work in the downtown core, we're talking about all of them.
Yeah.
And where I have the concern with, over and above the health, safety, and the roadways and the parking and all that stuff, I have a problem with the fact that there's one of the restaurateurs is very concerned about this, because he said today that he had, as Councillor Ramsey had said, he had 2,200 deliveries last summer, but he doesn't anticipate that large volume this summer. But without access to have his deliveries throughout the day, because deliveries not all the time can always be on time. So he said without that, and the large number of deliveries that he reduced, granted, his lifeline really to his business has been taken away from him, because he can't guarantee, and they can't guarantee, all of them, deliveries between 7 in the morning and 11. And he said, or he insinuated,
Yes.
I don't know if he came right out and said, that if his lifeline to his suppliers is cut off, he's out of business. So, and I think when you're in a group like restaurateurs or a hockey team or hockey players, you compete, but you compete on a level field. You can compete at the level as a restaurateur in cleanliness, in food variety, on the staff, various and sundry things. But when it comes down to somebody may gain a little bit if we say yes to this project, but in saying yes to that project, it may do one of their colleagues in, and I don't think I can support that position when the end result could be that one of our restaurants would be closed because of our actions here. So that's where I come from in the whole thing. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Councillor Yankoff, or was it Councillor Ramsey?
I think it was Ramsey.
Councillor Ramsey?
No, I just have a comment. Is being in sales all my life too, and there's a time restriction on these deliveries, and people, I'll tell you, like, there's going to be some morning you get up, if your truck's not going to work, or if there's too much snow on the road or anything like that, and you can't get there before 11 o'clock, I mean, what's going to happen? I mean, with all this stuff, the gates are going to be up if it goes through, and then you're going to be turning around and saying, well, I need my scallops, we say, for example, and you can't get them. And they keep talking about, people got to walk 46 meters and all that. Well, that's up to them. I mean, they're paying the bill, but at the same time, there's 101 things can happen when the person leaves the factory to go to your back door. Roads, truck, anything could happen. So that's all I'm saying about it. It's just, being in sales for 35 years, that's what happens. Thank you, Your Worship.
Just remember, we're talking about July and August.
Yes.
And is it sometime in September too, correct? With this?
Not much snow in them months.
No.
I'm not just saying snow, Your Worship, but
I know, just
vehicle-
mechanical problems. No, I know.
anything can happen.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm the same with your business. You know how it works.
Yeah, yeah. Some days good days, others days bad days. Councillor Rivard?
Thank you, Your Worship. Again, one of the things that can't be lost, I think, on this decision, I think, and I brought this up during the committee meeting today. I don't think that there's anyone that doesn't believe that having a pedestrian street, another one in Charlottetown, closed, the right way is a bad idea. I think it's a fantastic idea. I think most of council, if not all of council, would support that if the concerns were eliminated. So again, it's not that the city is opposed to closing down pedestrian streets. That's exactly why CDC, and planning department are teaming up with funding from ACOA to do a study this summer, and hopefully have some kind of recommendation back fall, and changes we can make moving forward, not only to Sydney Street but to other streets in downtown. And again, we see I think it's important, and I know other cities are doing it. I think it looks great, but again, like I said, I was on the fence on this one just because there's elements that for me, that's why I asked so many questions at the meeting this morning, was just that there was unanswered questions, not enough clarity for me, and I know we've been kicking this ball around for
some
years. But I just want to make that point that it's not lost on.
Councillor McCabe?
I just want to second that too. I think it's a great idea. I really like the idea of touristy closed streets where people walk and go, but I do think that there are things that have to be cleared up before we vote on this.
Yeah, I agree with Worship. I think everybody would like to see
Yes.
it. It's just got to be safe. It's got to be workable for everybody.
So we defer it, and what questions do we need to get answered? About the deliveries, closing off the whole street? The ACOA study is I think, longer than just a year. I think it's a 2-year window for that, because we have to work with the Confed Center, and also I think the Coles building. There's a number of variables or inputs to that. So
For me, it's I think there's the combination, or within our own committees, we have to get on the same page.
So what are the concerns? The
So parking for the residents,
Going
for
through
sure.
the parking lots? Okay.
Right, I don't think it should be a two-way street,
Okay. So
myself.
getting this down, Mr. And then there's also the full closure of the street from Great
Correct.
George.
I
What are
think-
the other concerns?
Your Worship, just before I can add this foolish thing here. When I did talk about potentially deferring at the meeting today, there didn't seem to be a lot of appetite from the applicants or the people that are bringing this forward. The message I got, and if I'm correct, was
July
they
8th.
they want to vote on this. They don't.
Yeah, but that doesn't prevent us from looking.
No,
into
I'm not saying, I'm not saying that.
If we don't want to go ahead with it, that's fine.
No, I get that. I just want to pass that forward.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
part of the meeting this afternoon was.
I just want
that.
to, I think we want to know the concerns so we can address them. If we decide tonight not to go with it, fine, but at least we can look into the questions of closing the whole street, taking the concrete curb out on the north side to make it at 21 feet wide. What's the other, make sure that we have parking going through all 3 parking lots, or access to all 3 parking lots. Anything else?
And what our meeting too, Your Worship, today is what the feeling, as Councillor Rivera just said too, they want it sort of dealt with, either yes or no.
Yeah, yep, we're going to do that.
Because as we all said, this ball's been kicked around so often that the skin's off it right now. And so let's just,
Okay, so we have 2 issues so far to look
Well,
at.
I think it's the 3, and the 7, 8, and 9, isn't it?
yeah.
Which is where we're starting.
Well, 7 is delivery companies, so if you have access right through the 3 parking lots, that could make deliveries
That
going
would make
through.
life easier.
Yeah.
Yeah, what?
That would make life a lot
Yeah.
easier.
Number 8, approval must be received, so if we get some delivery issues solved, that could get approval. And then apartment residents, if they have access to the 3 parking lots, that could help it too.
Your Worship, and don't forget, I mean, again, 7, 8, 9 is great, but again, we just heard from the fire department, and shouldn't discount what they're saying as well tonight. I mean, the chief made it clear that there's still some concerns, and again, other than 7, 8, 9, which is great, there's a bigger concern.
So just on the.
Yeah, but to clarify, Mr. Kelly, right, if it's a one-way from Great George to Sydney, to Queen, right, that there's some flexibility in the fire code, correct?
if it's a one-way street, which as the chief indicated, but again, if it's a one-way only, what's being proposed is that it's a two-way street at the end, and so that does go contrary to the chief's.
No. We're all, the concern we have, correct me if I'm wrong, Councilor Franco, it's to close from Great George to Queen. That would satisfy the code.
If they get access through the other operations, Your Worship, of the parking lot, so.
That's the other issue.
And
That's the
right,
other
the
issue.
church indicated that would not be a fast decision, Your Worship, it has to go to the
No.
finance committee. But the other point is, if I could, is
Yeah.
that they are looking for an answer, not to drag it out.
No.
They do want to know if they can or can't move.
There'll be a decision tonight, but on a go-forward basis, what we're gonna look at is two issues that were brought up. The parking lot, one way from Great George.
I think what Greg is trying to say is that the fire chief still has issues with 17 propane tanks. That if there is a fire, there's a possibility the block could be gone.
So do you want the propane tanks removed?
No, but there's got to be a better.
Because they're there, right? Those propane
I
tanks are
wasn't being
there all year.
specific to
That's
any
there.
certain element, just saying in general that, again, it seems that there's unanswered questions. And again, the proposal we have is closing it down at the corner of Old Dublin, where, again, that would create a two-way street. By moving it back for public works and for purposes of fire, for instance, then there's parking issues that come into play. So it just seems that every time you shut one door, it ain't open. And I think this is the frustration on behalf of Ben Murphy and the group, is the fact that there's just every time we close the door, you know, I swear 8 more just blow open, and this is where the confusion lies.
Yeah.
So are we all right with this? Like, I know we're gonna make a decision, but are we all right on a go-forward basis of what we wanna look at? Great George to Queen, access to the 3 parking lots going through off Great George. And then if the fire code is an issue, then might as well shut down the whole project. Why look into the other issues?
Well, that's the point. That's the
That's
very
it,
point.
that's it.
We can solve all the problems that are on the paper, but
Yes.
if down the road, and there's something drastic happens there in the line of fire, and the first question is going to be to the city is, who approved this? Well, our fire chief didn't.
Yeah.
Oh, who's going to look good on that?
Yeah, that's
So-
my concern.
In going forward, we might as well just leave it and not come back to it after
Well,
tonight's
I
decision.
think If my understanding is right, have we not been dealing with this for years?
Yes.
It's not the first time.
This is the first, I think, thorough debate we've had on it.
Yeah.
So, sorry.
Councillor Yankoff.
Go ahead. You
No,
started talking
Councillor
first.
Yankoff.
No, go ahead.
Go
You
ahead.
had your hand up. I didn't. I started talking.
I respect and heard everything the fire chief said, and I'm not taking away from anything he said, but I just keep going back to Farm Day in the city when the street was closed. How can you be okay with it for one day or 5 or 6 days for all those other weeks, but not okay to do a pilot for 7 weeks for the summer? I get it, but I don't get it. It just, especially with COVID times, like, or why not try it for a few weeks? And if it totally, doesn't work out, then we can reverse it. Like I say, I just don't understand how we were allowed to do it last year for a few days. And maybe the fire chief, maybe he didn't approve it then, I don't know. But we still, it happened, we did it.
From the police perspective, Chief, would there be anything that you would like to add on that? Like from versus, say, a Farm Day event to
The Farm Day event originally, from my understanding, was closing Sydney Street off so there wasn't vehicle traffic going through the venues on Queen Street.
Right.
Whether they stuck
It became a
tables
pedestrian
in
mall.
of their own volition, I'm not sure. But that's why Sydney Street was closed, basically, was because you'd set up a pedestrian mall market on Queen Street, and we didn't want vehicle traffic going through it. So that's why it was blocked off up at Great George and Sydney.
Thank you.
Councillor McCabe? Councillor Yankoff, you done?
Yeah,
You wanna
thank
add-
you.
And that clarified my point there, was my question, but I also think that with the parking thing, it's certainly worth exploring. I do, again, support the idea.
Councillor Rivard.
So the one day that they have right now, the Sunday that they operate, that we've allowed them to operate for 4 years, is that something that came through council?
So it hasn't been 4 years, it was last year that they allowed it to
Yeah,
occur
everyone's
as
telling me
part
4
of
years, that's
Farm
all I
Day
keep
in the
hearing,
city
so-
when they did that every weekend. And as the chief
No.
said, it became part of the pedestrian way rather than allowing cars to go
Gotcha,
through.
okay, I understand, okay.
So it was never approved.
Yeah, no, fair enough.
Just blocked
Okay.
off for traffic.
I don't know, was it? Was it approved, chief? Chief?
The event itself was
Approved.
but not, the traffic closures weren't approved by council.
Councilor Yankoff?
I don't know if we call it the applicant, but and I know we've done this before, but the person who was spearheading this is here.
Yeah.
Out, if we did
Yes.
have any more questions, just before we decide what we're doing. I just thought I
Well,
would
that's-
put that
that's-
up. I don't
that's-
know if that's allowed, I just know I've
That's-
seen that happen
That's a decision of
before.
council.
Yeah, I don't know, or if it's even
If you
necessary.
wish.
Just thought I would let
The
you
only
know.
point, Your Worship, is that we did advise other ones today that there would be no speaking at at council tonight,
Okay.
because others also would have been here as well
Sure.
if
Yep.
they knew they could speak.
Okay.
Because I think you were the only councilor outside of the committee that showed up.
Yeah, I just listened, I didn't speak.
And they all spoke their way today at the meeting, you know, and it was very informative, it was very good. They all had their facts straight, and so this is why it was sort of brought up here tonight.
So is there a report not being exercised on this now?
No, that's
We're
the
not
COA,
pushing reports
COA
for-
study.
Pardon me?
COA is looking into it. They're doing a study.
So when they're looking into doing the study, would they not make recommendations of what needs to happen to make it safe for fire and make it work?
We don't know.
So then why would we wait for the report?
Well, as part of the study, I'm assuming that we'll be in contact with the fire, what is it, the engineer, the safe fire protection from, from Frederick, I believe it is? I mean, they should be involved in the report, and they'll come back with recommendations to pass by the chief.
So when was the report supposed to be done?
We,
Mr. For purposes of the answer a couple of questions.
Alex, do you want to give them an answer?
On the scope and the breadth, you have to go up there and speak as if they recorded, if you would, Alex, please.
It's on public record.
Your Worship, that request for proposals is out right now, and I'm not sure when it's likely closing in the next couple of weeks. There will be stakeholders that will be meeting to review the various proposals that come in. I don't know that it's specifically alluded to discussion this evening, notwithstanding, in light of where we are. I mean, I'm sure we could potentially work with whoever is the prospective, consultant on that to look at that. It may be a little bit of additional money, but in light of the significant issue here this evening, I'm sure we could work that in regard to the issue at hand, and it has to do with it's the narrowness of that street, which is problematic. So that's really why I'm here tonight, is to kind of listen to this discussion in the event that when we meet with COA and with CADC, that I could bring this issue up. So it's in play. It's not been awarded. I don't know that it's specifically alluded to in the request for proposal, if that's what they wanted to look at. But in light of the fact that I'm here to represent the council, I can indicate that that is something that we would like to see as a part of that study for next year. And the intent is to ensure that like Argyle Street in Halifax, they get rid of all the curbs and it's all at one level, and it's all designed to be very pedestrian friendly. And I don't know whether we can do something similar on Sydney Street because it's so narrow. But I think what I'm hearing, that the piece that's missing is if you close Sydney Street at either end, the problem is that how do you access all of those parking lots? And that may be a design issue that could be looked at and costed, and then, but again, as the council, you'd have to go back to those are individual property owners to see whether they would be willing to participate. People will likely ask the question, how much is that going to cost? What's it going to look like? That could be a part of the study, but it wasn't specifically in the original request, but we haven't ordered yet.
And the timeline for the study? 2 years?
I think that's going to be back in the next week or so. That in
No,
regard to,
that's the request for proposals, the timeline for the study.
timeline for the study will be, these things usually take, a few months to get prepared, get some traction, and then get some feedback from there is a lot of stakeholders. Province House is involved, Confederation Center. So before we award, we'll be presumably, it's not being driven by us, it's being driven by CADC, but they're nicely involving us in it. But, again, that's why the discussion is important for me this evening, if you want to give me direction, because I'm the sort of the lead in regard to coordinating on the study. So I think I've got a handle on the technical issues in there, but I can't tell you anything more other than we can look at that.
Councilor Bernard, you had a question?
Yeah, thank you. So, Alex, what is the report? What's the mandate of the report then?
Well, the intent was, of course, we've had other issues on Victoria Row, similar issues in regard to the fire department's had issues in there as well, and we've had requests to expand the existing restaurants out into the right-of-way, which the chief and others had concerned about because that's a narrow right-of-way in and of itself, as well as the fact that there's a required 5-foot right-of-way that needs to be maintained in front of those businesses, which always gets sort of choked off, and then the planning department is down, kind of sweeping people back, and then so the restaurateurs want to then head towards the street. But that could be resolved depending on the right-of-way that's finally achieved in there. We may be able to maintain the 5 feet. The restaurateurs will get a little bit more room, but we can make it much more pedestrian friendly. One of the things that's driving this is that there's some recent new thinking about the Confederation Center. What are they going to do when the library's gone? How are they going to interact? The Province House is going to be coming to a close, so it's the whole entrance to Province House. There was a lot of money to fix the building, and there's a bit of a momentum to ensure that when the building is done, that the entrance to it is pretty spectacular. As well as the intent was, in the long run, is to have the pedestrian street or the area that could be blocked off extend up, go down Great George Street and then on to Sydney Street. So it's a phased project. This is not going to happen overnight. There's quite a bit of expense involved. It would likely start, any kind of improvements would be on Victoria Row, but it's the planning piece the council exactly wants in regard to what's it going to cost, can we technically do it, what are our options that need to be reflected in the study, which is really critical, because we may come to you in any given year and you may say, well, look, it's a great plan, but we can't work that into capital works this year, but bring it back next year and we'll do this phase. So
Alex, how many, is it just Victoria Row and Sydney, or is there other streets included?
It's also doing some streetscape work along Grafton, all the way around the perimeter of the property. Some of that's a lot less detail. Could be some lighting, but it's the Confederation Center, the Province House, that kind of square down, and then back up Sydney. That block of properties. The lighting has been done in front of Confederation Center, so that element's done. But it's trying to create sort of a consistent look. It's sort of ground zero of the city, and it's where most of the pedestrians congregate, and it's just try to get a nice look and feel and pedestrian environment created in that area. And it'll be phased, I'm assuming, that if council wants to pursue what's in that study, but that's where we are with it.
Thank you.
Councilor McKay?
Thank you.
No, I think that's great, and I think that's a smart thing to do, is look at this as the bigger picture and start figuring out what we
It's a big project.
prioritized. It is, but it will make a huge difference for our city. Thank you.
So, do we want to vote on allowing Sydney Street to go ahead as a pedestrian mall, or do you want to leave it, table it? I think they want a decision, right, Councillor Yankoff? So
I wasn't my meeting at noon, so
Yes,
I
you do.
asked you not to ask me that question. I
And
don't
so
know.
if council can either give direction to either accept or reject the request, Your Worship, that would certainly give staff a clear indication how to move forward with this particular situation, Your Worship.
Councillor Ramsey, as Vice Chair of Police and Protective Services, what do you want to do? Move to?
I think we should move, because the
Move.
impression I got from the people today is that they don't, in phone calls after that, is that they'd like to know either way, which way we're gonna go with it, and we talked about deferral there earlier, but as Councillor Duffy said today, well, we can sort of defer for a week, but then we all come back next week and say, what did we learn? So either we're in or we're out.
So move to reject the Sydney Street closure, correct? Is that what it is?
Or go to a vote. Yes, yes.
Is that your motion?
That's the motion.
Yeah.
Move to reject.
Can I just ask one clarifying point?
Yep, just one sec. Seconder? We need a seconder?
You want a second?
Seconder?
I would like to know, Peter, you had indicated that it would take a long time to figure out about the parking with the church?
No, I'm just trying to.
Like a long time, like the whole
Yes.
summer?
It's actually between the church and the province, because the province has a 99-year lease on it. They, the
Because I
gentleman
kind of
that's in
like
the,
the pilot
gentleman that's in
idea,
the
it'll give you a
building.
sense of whether or not sometime that street closing would be a good thing, but how long would it take to fix the parking
The gentleman
question?
that's in the building there
Yeah.
is paid for the province, not by the church.
The what?
There's a parking person that's in that little building
Hmm.
on Great George Street.
Mm-hmm.
He's paid by the province to ensure that no one comes into that parking lot without the authorization from MLA, clerk of the Legislative Assembly.
Right. And how many residents are there on that street, approximately?
Because like Peter said, Peter, what did they tell you today at the church?
Sorry, Jim, 1 second.
Yeah.
Lana, do you know the answer to that? How many residents would have cars on the street?
That they indicated it would have to go back to the
Finance Committee.
Finance and Property Committee.
July 8th is probably not a reality.
It would not be a quick process.
I think Doug Abbott's the
To
chair. of
answer
the
your
finance.
question, the residents live on Victoria Road, but they park. Like, the apartment
Okay.
building goes from, the front is Victoria Road, the back is Sydney. That's where they park, it's back there. Yeah.
Park the back of Sydney Street.
Okay.
Yeah.
So do you want to add anything, Councillor Yankoff?
So your
I
worship.
just,
Do you want to read the resolution?
Yeah, just so it's
Okay.
into the record, please. That the city, moved by Councillor Ramsey, second by Councillor Duffy, that the city of Charlottetown reject the request of the Sydney Street businesses pertaining to the street closure, your worship.
Councillor Yankoff, do you want to speak to it?
I just wanted to say that I think that it's a shame that we can't come up with some short-term pilot, given COVID-19, that would be a short-term, whether it's 4 weeks or 6 weeks, just a short-term solution for a really crappy COVID-19 year. So that's just me not ready yet to support the resolution. That's
point.
all. Yeah.
Point. Question?
What does the resolution say right now?
That the city of Charlottetown reject the request of the Sydney Street businesses pertaining to the street closure.
And does the council want to add somewhere, until such time a workable plan?
Friendly amendment?
Correct. I would be
That-
much more
that-
comfortable.
That it's safe by fire and agreeable by surrounding business?
Correct, until
You don't
such-
end it.
Until such time.
A workable plan is created that meets the fire department's concerns and the surrounding businesses.
Meets the NFPA, correct? Which is the National
And
Fire
parking concerns.
Protection Association's code.
And parking concerns if one.
Yeah, parking concerns, because that's my only big one.
Well,
Thank
that's,
you, Councilor Mayor, for that. Well, that is true, because, I mean, we all want the street like to be that way, but if we're hearing that there's safety issues, we
And
gotta
I mean,
address it.
you could, God forbid if you had a fire there next week.
Yeah.
If you said, let's do this a trial and get a fire next week, I don't know how you live through that.
Yeah.
Because we had a professional giving us our recommendation.
No, I agree 100%.
But I think that if you have a workable plan that's going to be safe and it's agreeable by everybody, then it's something you can revisit.
Councillor Bernard, I respect the amendment, but I think the fire chief has made it quite clear. The street is too narrow.
Yeah,
And to find a way around the NFPA code would mean widening the street, correct?
correct.
So either we widen the street,
Well, if somebody comes back with a plan that says they're going to widen the street
well,
and
you
agree
get to
with
move.
everybody, that's all I'm saying. You could end it tonight and just say, we don't agree with it, or you can leave it open-ended, so whether it's 2 years.
friendly
time,
amendment
when
will
the
allow
full
it.
plan comes through, you can revisit it.
And I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So,
Can you read it again there, Mr.
yes, your worship,
Kelly?
moved by Councillor Ramsey, second by Councillor Duffy, that the city of Charlottetown reject the request of the Sydney Street business pertaining to the street closure until such time a workable plan can meet the NFPA standards as well as the parking lot
Concerns?
concerns can be met.
Yeah.
and delivery.
Yeah, that's
That's
inherent.
separate.
Okay, question?
Questions, comments?
Okay. Councilor McLeod,
In favor.
Councilor Yankoff,
Not in favor.
Councilor Byrd,
In favor.
Councilor Bernard,
In favor?
Councilor McCabe,
In favor.
Councilor Duffy,
Favor.
and Councilor Ramsey.
In favor, your worship.
So 6-1. Any other business? No? Motion to adjourn.
Yeah.
All in agreement?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Albert.
Boys, thank you
Thank
very
you,
much.
Albert. Thank you,
Albert,
Chiefs.
Albert, the lights are working on the tower.
Great.
Albert?
Albert, the tower.
You didn't drop that card, did you?
No, he did not. We know who dropped it.
Wasn't me. He's so worried about that tower, like it.
Well, it's been out for quite a while.
Oh, no, must have his picture up there, doesn't he?
No, he wants to put it up there.
Well, I think we're on. I just,
Mr. Kelly, that's all.
I tried to put it back. That's why.